get on the beats.
What up, gang? It's your boy. It's your humble commissioner here. Sorry we're without Eric this week. His boy's on IR, out with an illness. So Eric's got to tend to do the Pops duties, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the Week 4 recap for us so that everybody's in the loop. Love to see where the league's at right now. This is definitely coming to be the best year yet. I say that every week. But that group chat, we got some sparks flying right now. Got a lot of activity, a lot of talking shit. I think this is great. So just gonna fly through this week's matchups real quick. This past week's matchups, you had Secondhand Smoke versus Cooper Flaggett. This was a matchup I was kind of sweating till the end. Grimes definitely loaded up on players for Sunday, but just kind of fell short there as I won 1766 to 1717. Top performers for the team. My team was Karl Anthony Towns, was 1 point ahead of Onyeka Okongwu at 198 and 197 respectively, and right behind them Keontae George 195, Julius Randle 191. Other side, Scotty Barnes 189 for Cooper Flaggett. Cooper Flag actually was his second highest performer there at 180 and 166 from Westbrook. In the aftermath of our trade from last week, this was kind of an interesting matchup to see. Love that it was this close. Stephon Castle got hurt last night, so we'll see what that looks like for my team monitoring or moving forward. But I escaped Bozo of the Week on this one. I burned a couple acquisitions, but it's okay. Didn't need them. Only needed 5 to get it done. And here we are. Gonna look at real quick Team Velasquez versus Kobe Wan Ginobili. Jorge ran away with this one. Jorge got his second win of the year, moving to 2-2 with a 17-25 to 15-13 win. Something's going on with Jesse's team here. See a lot of injuries. Paolo's out. Suggs is hurt on and off. Wembanyama didn't take the floor on Sunday. But Jesse's making some moves on the wire, playing the right guys where he needs to. LaMelo Ball was out most of last week, so hurt team Jesse. Hurt Juan Ginobili. Kobe Wan hurt. Hope to see him compete here as he moves now to 0-4. He's due for a win here soon. But not this week. Well done to Jorge for that win. We had back-to-back-to-back. Dak to Dak to Dak, as Eric would say if he were here. Ran away from Chank's Chuchos with this one. 1971 to 1546. I mean, both teams using almost all their acquisitions. Giannis sat a game out, I think. Sat maybe a couple games out in this matchup. So, again, Dakota's team, if healthy, probably would have done 2,000 points again. But it's still up in the air for who might be our first Mr. 2000 this year. Although all signs kind of looking like it's going to be Dak. Had a wild night from Jalen Johnson in this matchup, 117 points against Utah earlier in the week. So he finished this week with 291 points, building a case for player of the week, but we'll get to that here in a minute. Other side, you had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander as the top performer with 213. This was a fun matchup to watch, but I think it was over a little bit earlier than I had expected. But congratulations to Dakota moving to 4-0. Chank's Chuchos falls to 1-3. Pretty formidable team for 1-3, so we'll keep an eye on that. We saw in what I thought was the matchup of the week. I'm sure everybody would agree if you were in a loop about it, but Bronze Retirement Fund managed by CJ Livingston and Stone Cold Reeves Austin from Daniel Velasquez. 1731 to 1732 was the final. Just to kind of keep this on the record because this was fun. We watched it toward the end of Sunday night, double overtime games coming in, overtime games rolling in to extend this to be one of my favorite matchups I've ever seen in this league. It just kept going. And when it was all said and done, what we thought, I think last night we all hit the hay with CJ winning 1733 to 1732. And though CJ had already been hit with 2 quick stat corrections, right after the game's finished, there was one more additional stat correction that came through overnight, pushing Daniel ahead by 1 point for the win. Again, one of my favorite matchups I've ever seen. That's what this is all about. CJ's team tends to always be in matchups like this. I know Chance and I know Wet Boy and Connor For Real have had a lot of very close matchups in this league too. But stuff like this is where it's all, it's the fantasy gods. We're just kind of chasing, seeing what they'll do to us when it comes down to a matchup this close. But well done to both those teams. I thought both of them did a great job. CJ did load up with 7 out of 7 acquisitions, where Daniel only acquired 1 player throughout the week. Didn't activate TJ McConnell in time. Ja got hurt. Ja's hurt more now, so we'll see. But well done. 277 points from Luka Doncic and 170 from Michael Porter Jr. Denny Avdija or whatever. 203 points for Stone Cold Reeves Austin. That'd be his top performer, with Austin Reeves being his second highest with 192. Underneath them are Booker and Sabonis. So Daniel's team is still one to keep an eye on. Putting up a lot of points here and not needing any acquisitions to do it. That's kind of his style. We'll see if he continues to do that, as I think we've seen a lot of motion on the wire today. I think Daniel's name's on a couple claims, not claims, but ads. So we'll see. It's Monday, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But to wrap up last week, you had Senguns, managed by Eric Espinosa, outplaying delusional hoop dreams Ben Bowen, who was proving very true to his team name and delusional hoop dreams. Dogs walking around. Probably going to hear some snoring here in a minute. But looking at that matchup real quick, Eric moves to 4-0 with an 1863 to 1239 victory. Eric wins by over 600 points, with James Harden 329 points, Sengun with 215 points. Other side, you have Nikola Jokic, who played all his games this week, finishing with 275 points, and just not enough. 145 was the second best player. Ben, you have got to get it together, my boy. Yikes, bro. Ben might be bozo of the week just for lack of team management, lack of awareness, and for letting Jokic just rot outside of this fucking trailer that he decided to build his team in. And on the other side, actually, James Harden in this matchup had to be player of the week. Didn't matter. He could have just sat James Harden all week. Still would have fucking beat his ass by 400 points or some shit. But I digress. We'll get back to it. Good win by Eric. We'll keep an eye on this. Good job, Senguns. There you go. There's your bone, I'll tell you, this week. But Eric moves to 4-0. And our final matchup was Wet Boy Nation versus Connor For Real. That is 1494 to 1423. Again, as I just mentioned, both these guys have proven to be fairly formidable in these close matchups. They find their ways there. They don't sweat. This was a fairly close matchup. 223 points from Franz Wagner was the highest performer in this matchup. De'Aaron Fox is back for Connor For Real. I think that really helps him a lot. For real. Anthony Simons. Dang, goose egg against LA last night. What is that? I didn't see any of that. Must have been foul trouble or hurt or something, but only played 12 minutes. Regardless, he needed a couple big nights where he didn't get them. And Wet Boy moves to 3-1 on a 2-game win streak. Connor For Real drops to 0-4 real. Connor 0-4 real. Sorry, this dog's going crazy. Here comes the number one snorer here. It's the snooze fest looking at Ben's team. All right, to kind of recount what we just went over, we have matchup of the week. Bronze Retirement Fund versus Stone Cold Reeves Austin is a 1-point difference. We have Bozo of the Week, Ben Bowen. Player of the Week, James Harden, with 329 points. Let's go Team of the Week, going to back, putting up the most points again for the 4th week in a row. 1971 as he moves to 4-0. And Manager of the Week, Come on, man. Quit. It's snoring early. It's going crazy. Manager of the week. Man, a lot of me wants to give it to Stephen Grimes, as his team just kind of failed him, but really he should have won that matchup. Good pickups along the way. He had Dennis Jenkins from Detroit was an interesting pickup. He brought Ace Bailey back, who seems to kind of be hitting a rhythm, but nothing really worth talking about. I don't know though. He lost, so it's tough to do that as manager of the week. I think I might go. I really think I might go. I might go with Grimes here. Dakota did make 7 acquisitions for absolutely no reason. This one's tough. We could go Daniel, but not a lot of. I mean, he missed that IR. I can't be manager of the week. I was a dumbass this week, but could go Eric. Eric gets an honorable mention there. He had a lot of guys playing well, but James Harden, I'm gonna go. I'm going to go Wet Boy Nation. Wet Boy Nation, manager of the week. He had a huge night from Cade Cunningham, 140 points on Monday. Highest I think I've ever seen in this league. And then Cade didn't play the rest of the week. And, Wet Boy did just kind of ride that wave, but it worked. Ends up beating Connor for real, moving to 3-1. I think that's the best start we've seen him have in the last few years. So I'm gonna go Wet Boy Nation on manager of the week here. So congratulations to those guys. Thanks for letting me think that out loud there for a minute. I didn't really come prepared for manager of the week, and there was some guys that really deserve to have that. But let's look at our matchups ahead this week. I'm pretty excited about this week. We have myself versus Dakota, 2 undefeated teams here, both 4-0. Secondhand Smoke versus back-to-back-to-back. I think this one's going to play out to injuries and who can manage their team around injuries this week. A lot of day-to-day tags for Dakota. I have a couple guys that are hurt and I'd really like to see back on the floor. Stephon Castle, got to monitor that, see how bad that hip injury was. Embiid's not taking the floor again, which is not surprising. May see Brandon Miller back. But as we talk about injuries a lot in this league, these two teams matching up, we're going to have to kind of monitor what it's going to look like. And we both tend to use that wire a lot. I did want to make a little aside here, is that I saw a lot of action on the wire, or just the player pool in general this morning, it being Monday. That's cool to me. Guys that are looking ahead on the week, a lot of activity here. A lot of activity just for Monday as you scroll through the recent activity log. And we see some moves from CJ. We see moves from... I'm sorry. But regardless, a lot of guys already looking ahead, trying to get themselves in a position, a good position for this matchup. Also, some guys burning matchup acquisitions that they might be wanting to use later in this week. But we'll keep an eye on that. I like the activity on the wire. It means guys are getting involved. Guys are giving a fuck about what's going on. Trying to retool. You got guys like Chance who are in a tough spot. As we look at these, as the standings, Chance is 1-3, using that wire well. I think he's got a lot of points for being 1-3. Same with CJ, a lot of total points there for being 1-3. But looks like Chance has had the toughest run of anybody. Before we talk about next week's matchups, before I get right back to him, we should look at the standings. Chance has had 6,823 points scored against him. That is more than anybody, just more than Cooper Flaggett. But there's a lot of teams in here that have had very similar points points for as we scroll down. Dakota's the clear. He's ahead of everybody, 7,304. He's the only one over 7,000 right now. But you've got back-to-back-to-back secondhand smoke Sengoons are the only undefeated teams. You've got 3-1 are Wet Boy Nation and Stone Cold Reeves Austin. At 2-2 by himself in 6th place is Jorge Velasquez. You have a 4-team tie for 7th place, all at 1-3. Cooper Flaggett, Chanks Chuchos, Bronze Retirement Fund, and Delusional Hoop Dreams. And then all the way down, who have not won yet, Kobe Wan Ginobili and Connor For Real. Highest playoff percentage right now is back-to-back-to-back with a 93% playoff percentage, and the lowest is Jesse. At 0-4, he has a 12% chance of making the playoffs. The algorithm for the playoff percentage is kind of wonky. Never made sense to me, but it's got to factor in your team, your schedule. That we basically all play each other at least twice, I think, but some teams you don't play twice, and I think the teams that you do play twice kind of factor in. Whatever, you know how this stuff works, but it's not to be trusted and can be turned around very quickly, as we've seen that done many times in the past. So Jesse trying to push to the playoffs last year, so it's not over. There's 16 more weeks of the regular season. Don't panic. Nobody should panic. Jesse could win the next 16 weeks straight. Ben's not going to make the playoffs. These are some things that we know. So back to looking at this week's scoreboard. Sorry, my ADD is going nuts. But secondhand smoke back-to-back. As we watch those injuries, I think this one should be fairly close. We've both been putting up a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised to lose this matchup for myself. I think Dakota probably will beat me by a couple 100 points, but we'll see. Second matchup showing for me is Kobe Wan Ginobili versus Chanks Chuchos. Kobe Wan Ginobili 0-4, Chanks Chuchos 1-3. Chance is putting up a lot of points. And Jesse is not. So I'm going to have to kind of err on the side of Chance here. I think Chance is probably going to win this one by a couple 100, maybe 300 points, depending on what's going on with Jesse's team. He's got some big players down. I think Wembanyama plays a fair share this week, but will he take the floor? Will he not? His usage should go up if Castle's not playing. Wembanyama all of a sudden turns into a triple-double threat as he already was. But I think Chance is going to be victorious in this matchup. Sorry, my ADD is wanting me to remind you guys that Sengoons, Eric's team, has by far the least points against. And so far, it's been a cakewalk for him. But that might change this week as we see Wet Boy Nation versus Sengoons. Cade Cunningham is going to be very, very key for this matchup for Wet Boy. It's been a big reason why he has had this success, even though last week he didn't need him to do it. I think Mathurin is questionable tonight. We'll see how that works. I don't think Aaron Wiggins really needs to live in his IR. I think he should get Aaron Wiggins out of there and use that IR slot on a night in, night out basis. But again, we'll leave it up to these team managers to manage their team how they like. I think James Harden is on a fucking tear right now for Sengoons. Obviously our player of the week from this past week, and without Kawhi out there, without some serious point guard depth, Harden is just carrying a load for that team on the Clippers. And again, we're going to need to see Cade Cunningham and James Harden kind of nullify each other there if Wet Boy wants to be able to stay in contention with Sengoons. So, I got to go with Eric. Seeing the day-to-day tag with Cade Cunningham is making me lean toward Eric's team here. But I think this one has the makings to be a matchup of the week kind of matchup. Both teams on a win streak. Obviously, Eric undefeated. But I got Eric winning this one by 100, 150. But things could change with Cade. Cooper Flaggett versus Team Velasquez. This is a quiet rivalry that I like to watch. Jorge's got Anthony Davis out for the whole week this week. Again, hanging on to Ty Jerome is something. I don't know that I would have done that this long, but now he's expected to come back sometime soon. Even Tobias Harris, maybe get him the fuck out of there. No timetable for return for Tobias Harris, and not a guy that I think is worth harboring in your IR slot when you've got a guy like Anthony Davis who's going to be able to float in and out of there most nights or just sit in there all week. If Jorge can figure this IR situation out, I think he's in a good spot to actually contend in this matchup, but Grimes' team is very healthy. Westbrook's been a sneaky guy off the bench for the Kings. I really think that Grimes will probably win this one by 100 points. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on how Jorge works around those injuries. I thought he did a great job on the wire last week. Just a few pickups, but they were good guys. He picked up Nurkic. But again, we will monitor this matchup, and I've got Grimes winning right now for 100, 150 points. Stone Cold Reeves Austin versus Delusional Hoop Dreams. This one's fun. We know Daniel's going to win. Ben's... I don't have any words, but this is fun for CJ. Of course, last week we talked about him wanting to beat the shit out of CJ. Did I just say CJ? This is fun for Daniel. I was thinking about CJ because he just, beat him in a really fun way last week, but he also wants to beat Ben. So back-to-back, can't think of the word I'm looking for here. My ADD fucking awful today. But back-to-back glory wins here for Daniel. I think would give him a lot of momentum moving forward if he rolls into week 6 at 4-1. We got to start talking about him on a return to the playoffs and what that's going to look like. But looks like Ben has set his matchup for the week. Didn't pull Kobe White out of IR, even though Kobe White had 62 points in his debut last night. I can't help this man anymore. So good luck to Ben. But Daniel's probably going to win this one by 600, 800 points. And last but not least, Connor For Real versus Bronze Retirement Fund. Oh, man, it's tough to see Connor in 0 for real. But Paul George returns for him. I might do something. Maybe. But CJ's dealing with some outs. I think we should see LeBron return at some point soon. Maybe Jordan Poole comes back. No, Poole's out this week. Garland looks like he's going to be out. Who knows what's going on with Garland in the toe. But I think this ought to be a close matchup. Connor would have beat him last week had this matchup happened last week. Connor put more points up. And for that reason, I'm going to kind of lean towards Connor to get his first win of the season in this matchup. Sorry, CJ. But I think this one could be close again. These are teams that often sit in a matchup of the week sort of situation because it's so close. But I'm going to err on the side of Connor's team, Connor For Real, winning this one by less than 100. We'll see. Okay. Come on, Ben. Get your shit together, dude. Kobe White's sitting in your IR. He's healthy. He's ready to play. You gotta look at those things. Just you put a player in IR and you're gonna let him live there. You might as well drop him and let one of us pick him up so we can compete. I'll trade you fucking Joel Embiid for his ass right now. But I'll do all that shit aside. Thanks for listening to this recap, gang. Again, this has been a lot of fun this year. I'm loving seeing the activity in the chat, on the waiver wire. A lot of teams putting up a lot of points. Teams are very close this year in the total points column. And it's still too early to really talk about the playoff picture for real. So we'll monitor all these matchups moving forward. I'll see you guys next week on the week 5 recap. and might have Eric with me then. We'll see. But as always, gang, don't bet on birds.